mandatory for most people to go to church, and if you didn't, then you wouldn't be considered part of the norm. And so therefore, that's why the sanctuary has to be so large. There used to be 600 to 800 people who used to attend services here, and now we normally have around 100 on a good day. And so the difference between the two is huge. And so the norm was to go to church on a Sunday morning. However, that is no longer the case, but that is why so many churches exist within Kingston especially. It's surprising how old St. Andrew's actually is. The first stone was laid in 1820, and then the first service that occurred was 1822. However, in 1888 there was a fire, so what is appearing in the actual sanctuary dates back to 1890 when they reopened.
So in 1887, the church discovered that their heating system was failing, and unfortunately didn't have enough money at the time to fix it. And unfortunately, they let it slide for too long because one morning at about 3 a.m. in 1888, the furnace malfunctioned and caused a spark, and the building went up in flames. There was a security guard sleeping in the far foyer here who noticed the flames and managed to get out a few pieces of furniture and the gold bird that is currently on top of the organ. Unfortunately, that was all that was saved. The entire inside of the sanctuary was gutted, and some of the stonework also fell down. But thankfully, the congregation stayed united and managed to rebuild the church very quickly within 2 years, and were able to use a lot of the original stonework. So the church reopened again in 1890.
So we had Sir John A McDonald as well as Sir Oliver Mowat attend here from a youth age until they were both young lawyers and then went to pursue politics further. Sir John A McDonald actually moved to Ottawa to pursue his prime ministership and actually switched to the Anglican Church, which is kind of neat. And then Sir Oliver Mowat went to pursue the Liberal Party of Canada. I feel as though if they were at the same church service, they would still respect each other because they still knew that the other person was a good person. So
if people come in and take a look at our back pews, they will notice there are a lot of wooden carvings done into the wood. And this is because the church used to have another pew that went along the back. So you couldn't actually go from one side of the sanctuary to the other, which is why we have the two aisles. You used to have to go all the way to the front and then around the other aisle. So it used to be mandatory that RMC cadets attend services. So when they did, they'd come and they'd sit in the back pews. And apparently they got a little bored during the sermons because they would carve their names into the pews. And one very famous carving we have is by World War I flying ace Billy Bishop. It's carved into the wood as WA, standing for William Avery, Bishop, 1911 to 1915. So he graduated from RMC and of course went off to fight in World War I. Probably not very smart at the time. I'm sure that a few knuckles were rapped, because I'm sure people noticed. But it's something that we consider very historical now. We're very, very grateful that we have it. And actually, there was a misconception. We actually sold the set of back pews to another church that needed pews. And they initially thought that the carving of Billy Bishop was on that pew. So for a few years, the church thought that they had given away something very valuable. But then a few years ago, it was discovered that it was tucked away in the corner. So we're very happy that we still have it. Everything is, original to the 1890s church, and even though the church burnt down in 1888, the foundation is still the same. If you go into the basement of the church, it's really neat because St. Andrew's is literally built on the rock. Our floor in the basement is actually stone. So, that hasn't changed. That was still there after the fire. So people can walk around and think, Sir John A McDonald walked the same way that I'm walking, 200 years ago, which I think is a really neat concept.
Me and Callista have come in here and have done research and studied upon it, and I was shocked when I heard different things and just so interested. And so for me, when I get interested in something, I just immerse myself in it, and so I'm just amazed by how much stuff there is to learn. Kingston is full of history, and Kingston is one of those places that tells so many stories through those histories. And I feel as though it's good to take that time because it also gets you to explore a different, almost culture. Because the culture that existed in 1820 or 1890, it is so different from what we experience today in 2013. And so it's just really nice to be able to take a step outside of your comfort zone and just immerse yourself in a different area. It's almost like traveling to I don't know, Europe, and instead it's just walking into a church or walking down a street and reading a plaque. And it's just really nice to be able to take that time, and it doesn't take that long either. You could come in here for a minute and see all the different architecture that exists in here. And even just by seeing it for only a minute, it still has that impact. And so I think that, you know, whatever time length you want, it's worth it.